Insperity presents the Small Business Advocate Show with Jim Blasingame, brought to you by FedEx, CareerBuilder.com, and Palo Alto Software. This is a copyrighted production of Small Business Network, Inc., all rights reserved.
He's the man who's teaching small business how to embrace social media, the king of tweets.
Oh, they have the internet on computers now. To start, press any key. Where's the any key?
Jim Blasingame, the small business advocate.
Welcome back. 34 after the hour. Thank you very much for hanging out with me. Thanks for being part of my day. Always a pleasure to continue to be with you. I'm very excited about having our good friend, Dr. Gene Griessman, back on the show. Gene is an original founding member of our Brain Trust. I fell in love with his work and with him. I don't mind saying when I first saw his book, The Words Lincoln Lived By, I wish you could see my copy. The pages are yellow. They're dog-eared. I used a completely wore out a highlighter on it. There are Post-it notes sticking out of this little 134-page book, and so many since then that we've found of Gene's. And he's one of the great minds in our Brain Trust. Gene Griessman, welcome back to the show.
I'm always glad to be with you. It's a pleasure.
And also, by the way, folks, Gene, thanks again for being with us. Folks, as you heard me say earlier in the hour, one of the top Lincoln portrayers on the planet, probably in the galaxy, and so many other books that he's written and so many other things he's done. Highly accomplished, an Emmy award-winning television personality and producer, right, Gene?
That's right. As a matter of fact, I've been judging Emmy nominations for the last 3 weeks, looking at all the stuff that's up. Wow. So I enjoy doing that.
Well, good for you. I'm that's impressive. Okay, Gene, happy Memorial Day. We were just talking to Ken Davis, and he and I were talking about the sort of the interesting thing of saying Happy Memorial Day. What do you think?
I think that's a good thing to do if we know what the nature of patriotism is. Let's start with Lincoln, which is a good place for me to start, right. And that is Lincoln defined the nature of our government by calling it government of the people, by the people, for the people. It was people's government, which was a big experiment that people's government could survive. Now, you see, I think that you have to think, what is the alternative to government? You see, we could, at the time, you could have government by a king, by royalty. You could have government by a dictator, a military regime. Mm-hmm. You could have people's government, or there's another alternative, and that is anarchy.
Right.
And I've had an experience in living, at least briefly, under two of those forms of government. Of course, I lived for a long time under people's government here, but I was a visiting professor at the University of Islamabad in Pakistan for an academic year. At that time, it was under a military regime.
When was that, Gene?
It was in the 70s, early 80s, mm-hmm. And General Zia was the head of the government, and let me say that the military regime in Pakistan actually was more efficient and more honest and less corrupt than the democratic regime had been.
Wow. And like Mussolini, the trains ran on time, right?
They absolutely they ran much more regularly.
Right.
And you see, under a dictator or under a military regime, you actually may have a safer government. It may be more efficient.
No one's ever said that dictatorship isn't efficient.
That's right. But the problem is, what do you do if it does things you don't like?
Right.
And so you don't have any way to adjust or change it. That's your problem. Same thing with when you rule by a king or a queen. Mm-hmm. You can maybe protest, but you might get killed for doing it.
Right.
In the United States, we have people's government, and we can do something about it.
But it's messy. It's not tidy, is it?
Lord, it's so messy And you see, I hear a lot of people talking about our freedoms being taken away and denouncing the president, and that we've been doing that for a long time. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, wow, you wouldn't even be able to do this in many parts of the world.
Isn't that a great irony that people? Isn't that the most delicious irony, Gene, in our modern times, that you have these people who stand up and denounce America and glorify other types of governing, as you've identified earlier this segment, and they do it in a country that allows them to do that very thing, and they could not go to the other place and do the same thing.
That's exactly right. You can say anything you want to today about our government, and nobody's going to come knocking on your door.
Yep.
By the way, I was telling you off air that I may say some things today that will stir up things. You won't mind that, will you?
Well, that's the reason why we invite you back, Gene. You're never. One thing about Gene, ladies and gentlemen, Gene Griessman, he's never boring. I promise you. He and I will be right back. Dr. Gene Griessman, ladies and gentlemen, one of the most interesting people you will ever meet. 20 till. Stay with us.
So ferry, cross the Mersey, 'cause this land's the place I love. And here
Insperity presents the Small Business Advocate Show with Jim Blasingame, brought to you by FedEx, CareerBuilder.com, and Palo Alto Software. This is a copyrighted production of Small Business Network, Inc., intended for the private use of our audience. Except as otherwise provided by copyright law, all other copying, redistribution, or publication without prior written consent is prohibited. All rights reserved.